Hi all, in this video let's understand about JavaScript reduce function. So reduce function is a function which you can apply on the array methods. So now this reduce method will be executed on each and every element of the array with its callback function, and the end result it will be returning a single value. Now let's see how to use this reduce function and its edge cases. So the easiest way to understand this reduce method is to return sum of all the elements. So like you sum of all the elements in an array. So this is the best example to understand the reduce method. So let's start with this. So I'm taking the constant sum with initial. So this is my method name. Okay. Now here I will start the array. I will take this array. I have an array dot reduce method. I'm doing this reduce method. So this reduce method will take two parameters. One is a callback function. So let me give that callback function like this. This is a callback function and this is the initial value. This is the syntax of the reducer method. So it has two arguments. The first argument is a callback method and second argument is the initial value. This initial value is an optional one, but we can learn a number of things with this initial value. Fine. So this method, so what does this callback function takes? So the first parameter is previous value, okay, comma, and second parameter is a current value. And the third parameter is, you can say this as current index, and the fourth parameter is array, the current array. Fine. These are the arguments it has, the callback method of reduce has. Okay. And this is an initial value. This is a second argument. This is optional. Fine. So inside this, I have taken this argument function. Okay. So now inside this, just I will console. So I will console all these values once. Okay. Let me console this so that we can understand how we are going to display the things like, okay. Like let me display the current index first, later on previous value, later on current value. Fine. I have displayed all these elements. Fine. So now if you observe, so we'll be getting the current index as 0, previous value as 0 and 10. So now our aim is we want to add the things, right? So we need to do sum of 10, 20, 30, 40. So finally we will be getting 100. So this is the output 100. So how we need to do that? 10 plus 20 plus 30 plus 40. So this is what we need to do. Okay, fine. Now this is what our expectations. How this reduce method will work. So let me explain that. So previous value means, so it will take, if you provide the initial value, now previous value becomes that initial value. Now initial value is 0. Okay. Now in the previous value, you'll be having 0. That's the first iteration. And in the current value, you'll be having the first element of the array. Okay, fine. So now let me return the previous value plus current value. Okay, here you no need to worry about the current index. So that is just an index, and array is a iteration. So in these two arguments, these two parameters, you no need to worry. So these two are very much important. Previous value means you can also call this as an accumulator. So initially it will be taken this initial value as its value. Later on, once this current value will be pointing to this element. Now what happens in the first iteration? You are adding. So in the first iteration, what happens? 0 plus 10 as a current value means it is the first in the like first element of this array. It will point to the first element of the array. So now 0 plus 10, it becomes 10. So now in this previous value you'll be having 10. So if you return it, so what happens? It is going to return you this values to the previous value. So that's the reason this previous value can also be called as an accumulator. In the next iteration, what happens? In this previous value you'll be having 10 now plus the current value will be the second element. It would be iterated to the second element. Now the current value is 20. That results into 30. Now this 30 value will be written back in the previous value. So in the accumulator or the previous value, you'll be having 30. Now in the another iteration, the previous value you have 30 plus this one 30. So now 30 becomes 60. So it becomes 60 in this iteration. This Now we are returning this 60. This value is written back again. This would be stored back in the previous value. Now it becomes 60 plus what happens? The last iteration item is 40 equal to 100. So this value would be written back. So now if you see the final value is 100. This value is written back for us. You can see here 100 was written back. I'm calling this method here. So once this method is called, you'll be executing these things and you are going to return back 100. So this is how the iteration works for the reduce method. Fine. So now this is how it was work. So let's see in each iteration what happened. I have explained you. So let's see here as well. So I have console that in the first iteration, second iteration, third iteration, fourth iteration. So in these four iterations, what happens? We'll see. So let me open this. In the first iteration, index is 0, previous value is 0. Why the previous value is 0? So whatever value you give here, in the initial value, here we have given 0. That initial value will be taken as a previous value in the first iteration. So in the first iteration, this previous value becomes the initial value. Okay, and the current value will be pointing to the first element of this 10. This is how it works. Now in the second iteration, so in the current index is 1, second iteration 10. So from where this 10 got? 0 plus 10. This 10 came for the previous value. So likewise 10 plus 20, this previous value will be like it is a sum. It is a calculation of the previous execution. So previous execution is this one. That calculation will be coming to this iteration. Fine, the next iteration. Now these two will be added and this sum would be the value of the previous value in the current iteration. So this is how the accumulator or the previous value will be working. Fine. So this is when you give the initial value. Okay. For example, so now see, let's understand this point. If we provide this initial value, what happens? This previous value will be assigned this initial value and the current value will be the pointing to the first element of the array. Okay, this happens when you give the initial value. Now for suppose I am not giving the initial value because this initial value is an optional one. So I am not giving this initial value. I am removing this initial value. If you see, still we are getting the value sum as 100, but the iterations were reduced. The reason behind this is when you remove this initial value, what happens is this previous value will be pointing to the current element. Now you can see I wrote the in sentence as well. If the initial value is not provided, what happens? This previous value will be pointing to the first element. Now what happens is if the initial value is not provided, we have not provided the second argument here initial value. Now this previous value will be pointing to this 10. Okay, as this is pointed to the 10, the current value, this current value would be pointed to the next element. I'm sorry, here it would be pointed to the next element. Okay, it would be pointed to this element. Okay, as the optional value is provided, if you provide optional value, previous value will be taken the initial value. Okay, and the current value will be pointing to the first element. Now you have not provided the initial value. That's the reason this previous value will be pointing to the first element and the current value will be pointed to the second element. So if you not provide the initial value, this is going to happen. If you not provide the initial value, the previous value will be the array of 0 and the current value will be the array of 1. So this is what we need to understand. This is very much important for us to understand while you're working with the reduce method. So most of them, they think that the optional value like initial value is an optional value. You can provide that or you can not provide that. And you may think that the values will be the same, but it is not the same. Okay, it would be different. So in our case, the output would be the same. Okay, but in the another use cases, it might be different. So that's the reason you need to understand what happens when the initial value is provided, what happens if the initial value is not provided. Fine, hope you understand this part. So let's discuss the another type errors. So when you get error, so for example, if your array is empty, okay, if your array is empty and there is no initial value, okay, initial value was not provided and your array is empty, in these situations you will be getting a type error. So that is also we have understood. Okay, right? If there is no values in the array, if there is no initial value, then you will be getting an error. Okay, so if you have a single value in the array, okay, then that solo value will be returned back. If there is a single value in the array and there is no initial value given, So there is no initial value given. And if you have a single value in the array, so no callback function will be triggered. Directly that solo value would be returned back. Okay. If this value is empty, the array is empty, and if you give this as a initial value, okay, this would be directly returned. If the array is empty and if you provide a initial value like this, that value would be solo value. Those are known as the solo values. That value would be directly returned back and no callback function would be executed. Okay, this is in short, if there is a single value in the array or a single value in the callback function, that value would be returned back as solo value. Okay, these are some edge cases. Okay, so I think you understood about the JavaScript reduce method. So we have discussed about these importance of this initial value. If the initial value is provided, okay, then previous value becomes the initial value and current value becomes array of 0. If the initial value is not provided, the initial value is not provided, then previous value will be the first element of the array and the current value becomes the second element. Okay, fine. Hope you understand this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more videos. Thank you.